Hi, I'm Cindy, and I recently retired from healthcare. I've been a nurse for well over 40 years, and I'm very grateful that I was able to retire at 62. I really never thought that would happen. But in the process of trying to figure out financially, primarily, could I afford to retire, there was a lot of things that I had to dig through and work through that I wasn't aware of that nobody tells you. So, my goal is to give you some ideas of things that you need to look at. And don't wait till you're in your 50s, late 50s, early 60s before you start. You need to start now, whether in your 30s, your 40s, even your 20s would be great. So I do have some notes, so bear with me as I look down at my notes. But the first thing I want to say is you need to understand your situation. What does your employer offer? Most do not offer pensions anymore, especially if you are in the private sector. If you are in public sector, like public health, state health departments, CDC, you probably will have a pension, but you need to know what your numerator is. You need to know, is it a rule of 80? Is it 3% a year? At what point can you retire and still purchase health care if you are under retirement age? So you need to get your numbers. And you should have been provided a lot of that when you went to employee orientation. But if you've been there a long time, you may not even know. So I would suggest that you reach out to HR and find out what your options are. And then also find out, does your employer offer like a 457, a 401k? And if so, how much does that employer contribute to it? Because that's another way that you can bridge that income gap if your pension isn't going to cover all your bills. And then the other big thing is a budget. You need to know where you're spending your money. How much do you have coming in? How much do you have going out? What do you anticipate when you retire? Because remember, if you do have a pension, it's probably fixed, right? Very, very few offer any sort of cost of living. And if they do, it's so minuscule as to not even be worth the paper it's printed on. And the same thing with 401k. That's going to be at the whim of the market, right? So you need to know where you're at. If you're carrying debt, what is your plan to get out of debt? There are programs as well that can help you get out of debt. But, generally you start with the highest interest card and put all of the money on that you can to pay it down and then move on to the next one and so on. I personally have been in that situation more times than I care to admit. But I think I've finally learned my lesson, right? It's not worth it carrying the debt. It is much better to go into retirement debt free if you can. So then you also want to maximize your catch-up contributions. So for instance, say you were a stay-at-home mom for 20 years and you're going back into the workforce at 40. Okay, you've lost some of your prime earning years. So you need to find out what you can do for catch-up contributions. So if your company offers a 401k or a 457, usually you can access a financial advisor with that, through whichever company is administering your plan. Talk to them. It's usually free and they are a wealth of information. So again, this goes back to knowing what your numbers are. Then you want to maybe think about generating some additional income. Working overtime isn't always the best option. And I say that simply because we're tired physically and mentally, and then it doesn't leave you much left over, much bandwidth to really be able to enjoy your life. And I'm not saying, you're trying to generate enough income that you can quit your job. I mean, if that's your goal, great. But you need to enjoy your life now while you're living it. Don't keep thinking it's going to happen in retirement. You need to be living your life now. So think about, you could sell some sort of products on the side. We're all social sellers, right? To a point. I mean, we're always recommending things that we like to our friends. Well, that's selling, people. That is selling. And there are ways to monetize that. There's other things like digital products, which I also do. I do social selling and I do digital products. And it was a way for me to bridge my income gap. Am I bringing in the money that I want? No, but I'm going to get there. So those are things that you want to consider. And I'm really happy to explore some of those with you. And then you might want to think about downsizing. Maybe the kids have all left home and you're still in this great big house that you don't need and it costs a fortune to run. So maybe you need to think about, is it worth downsizing? But look at the real estate market where you live, right? Because if the housing costs are so high, the housing prices, you may be further ahead to stay where you are rather than to try to sell and buy another house cash free. And then, all of these things are to help you create the future that you deserve and that you want. And I know for me, I didn't really start exploring it till I was about 55. And yes, do I wish I had started younger? Of course I do. But as a single parent, it wasn't possible. And I had my hands full with other things. So if this has been helpful to you, please comment, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'm going to be putting up more content like this. And again, the disclaimer, I am not a financial advisor. I am just simply a middle-class woman who found a way to retire on her terms. And this is strictly from my lived experience and from what I have learned and educated myself.